Being a dual citizen gives you more options, but most people think you have to move far away from home, learn a new language, and wait years to get a second citizenship. But for decades, there's been a way to become a dual citizen without having to live in or even visit another country, and it's called citizenship by investment. So what is citizenship by investment? There are different kinds of programs, and each of them can be a little bit different. So I'm going to give you my definition, which is a streamlined program that has predefined investment amounts that anyone can participate in to get a citizenship in a matter of months. When I say anyone, there are some restrictions in terms of restricted nationalities: Somalia, Afghanistan, North Korea, sometimes Cuba, occasionally a few others on a program-by-program basis. And generally speaking, because this is a very publicly available program and countries don't want to bring disrepute to themselves, you have to have a clean criminal record. You can't have a long litany of lawsuits against you or other problems. And I suppose if you're just a notorious person, they might not take you. But for most people, if you can make the financial investment, you can become a citizen in another country in a matter of months. And so it's predefined. You follow the criteria, they pre-approve you, you then make the investment, you get the citizenship. There's no waiting around. And so in naturalization, certain countries, they say after 5 years you can be naturalized. Some countries do come through. Other countries, you apply after 5 years and the application just sits. Or they say, sorry, no, come back in 5 more years. They deny you, come back later. Or they say, oh, well, you didn't do well enough on the language test. You need to come back and do better. So that's something that can happen with naturalization. They can also say when you start the process of being a resident of a country later and you come back, you thought it was 5 years, then they change it in the middle. Now it's 7 years, and so you're extending it, right? And so with types of citizenship that you're waiting to get, it can take longer. It isn't necessarily as guaranteed. Citizenship by investment isn't guaranteed, but there's a certain process to follow. And so there are a number of countries, a little more than a dozen countries right now, that offer some form of citizenship by investment. This is different than a golden visa, a residence by investment program, an investment visa. What we're talking about here is getting the actual citizenship. You are a citizen of the country. That entitles you to get a passport, which you can travel on. You can live in the country. This is different than just a residence permit, which isn't as permanent. So we have the most permanent way to spend time in a country without the obligation to do so. And so the core 5 countries that offer this are all in the Eastern Caribbean. Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis offer certain tax advantages for folks who live there, as well as Grenada, St. Lucia, and Dominica. These passports are all relatively similar. They each have different advantages, but they're what I would call Tier B plus passports, generally speaking, which means you have relatively decent travel around the world. But let's say that was the only passport you have, you would need a visa to go to the US. You would need a visa to go to Canada or Australia. But you can go to Europe, you can go to most other places in the world, and you can use that passport to get residence permits on. So that's how those passports work. Those were the original. St. Kitts and Nevis, for example, it's the longest running program out there. And so the Caribbean programs largely function based on a donation. There may be other options. You start a business from an approved list, or you make a real estate investment in an approved list. Generally speaking, there's very high commissions in those. It's not a lot of selection in most of the cases. There are limited examples where you might want to buy a property, i.e. in St. Kitts and Nevis, or if you're buying a very expensive villa, multi-million-dollar villa. Otherwise, you're going to want to make a donation ranging from $100,000 for a single up to $150,000 up to a little bit more than that for a single, and then you can pay more for a family. And so generally you can bring in yourself, you can bring in your kids, sometimes you can bring in your dependent parents, you can bring in the whole family in many cases. That's the Caribbean. There are new entrants to the market. Turkey, for example, is a program where you're going to buy real estate or you're going to put money in the bank. And so you're talking about $400,000 or $500,000. Now, obviously, you've got exposure to a different kind of currency, but unlike those Caribbean donation options, you can actually sell the property in the future. You can sell the property, you can close the bank account, take your money out 3 years later. You don't need to learn Turkish. You can get citizenship for the whole family. The fees are lower because the process is a little more fast-paced in Turkey. I mean, more fast-paced than a 6-month process in the Caribbean, give or take. But if you want to get your capital back, you get the passport now, and then you have a restriction on getting your capital out for 3 years. And then you've got other programs around the world. Vanuatu has a donation program that's in the South Pacific. They also have a bond option. That is a less reputable passport. But you've got new, programs coming in. Egypt has a program where you invest in real estate. Jordan had a program. Sometimes programs come and go. Montenegro had a program and then closed it. Cyprus in the European Union had a program and closed it. Malta doesn't like to be called citizenship by investment. And unlike most of these programs, the process should take somewhere between 6 to 9 months. Malta's process might take you closer to 15 to 18 months. And unlike the others, you do actually need to go and spend a little bit of time there. But you don't need to move there for the whole year. You just do need to establish some time in Malta. So that's a little bit different kind of program, but that tops the scales. By the time you're all in with the fees, you're probably paying close to $1 million or even more, depending on how big your family is. And so these are usually smaller countries, right? Malta is a country within the European Union. So if you spend that $1 million, you and your entire family can now go and live in Paris. You can go and live in Dublin. You can go and live in Sweden. You can go and live in Spain. The entire Europe is available to you, and you can travel the same way as any European. So that's one that does allow you to go without a visa to a country like the United States or Canada. Malta, of course, is a small country, as are the Caribbean countries, as is Vanuatu. The only real exceptions to this are like Turkey and Egypt, where those are obviously larger countries with real domestic economies, and they've focused on getting people to invest in real estate in a more flexible way than some of the other programs have. Otherwise, smaller countries, it's money for speed. You don't have to move there. You don't have to learn the language. The language in the Caribbean countries is English. But again, some of these programs are not generally investment. However, if you go to the Caribbean, it's a choice of $100,000 in one country as a donation and $300,000 as an investment, and there's conditions, and you've got to hold it for 5 to 7 years. I think it's often better, just time value of money, certainty, not worrying about it, just pay the $100,000. I have done that in St. Lucia. And so what these countries do is they'll use the money to build, especially in the smaller countries, they build roads, they build schools, they build housing. I mean, these countries might have populations of 50,000 or 100,000 people. They are not big countries. They are countries that don't have a lot of resources. This may make up a decent chunk of their budget. And so some people call the idea of citizenship by investment exploitative. They say, why should you be able to be a citizen of a country you don't have a genuine link with? You should have to go and live there and become one with the country. Well, these are countries that want to raise money, and in many cases, they have good passports. Malta's passport is as good as really almost any in the world, quite frankly. The others are good, but they're offering you a degree of freedom because these smaller countries don't want to bother you. They don't come with geopolitical baggage. They don't come with tax baggage or regulatory baggage. And so let's say you're an American, you're a U.S. citizen. You can reduce your taxes by moving overseas, particularly if you're an entrepreneur, a little bit less so if you're an investor. But you're still going to pay something. In many cases, it may be a lot less than what you'd pay in the U.S., but you're also going to file a lot of forms. You're going to be subject to scrutiny, and you're going to have to, fill out, bank account reporting forms and different stuff. If you say, you know what, I don't want to be American anymore. Now, there's other ways to get citizenship through your family tree, through naturalization. If you have a big business, a country like Turkey might give you citizenship for creating jobs, that kind of thing. But if you just want the most streamlined path to getting citizenship quickly, because you want the flexibility to travel somewhere that you can't, because you want the backup, or because even if you want to replace your current citizenship, citizenship by investment allows you to do that in a relatively reliable way. And so the idea that this is unfair, you're contributing to a country that's actually going to put the money to good use, unlike the way your government uses the tax dollars you're paying now. These countries really can use the money, and because they have small populations, it's actually being much better managed, generally speaking. Now, here's the questions that you want to ask yourself, because I think people often have the wrong idea about getting a second passport. If you have a lower quality passport in terms of travel right now, what I would call a T or C passport, you need a visa to go to the US, you need a visa to go to Europe, maybe you need a visa to go almost anywhere, then obviously visa-free travel, just be able to live your life, do business, go to conventions, go to trade shows, meet people, do whatever you have to do to make more money, is important. And so you might want to look at the passport with the best visa-free travel. you're probably going to start, if you can't afford Malta, you're going to start in the Caribbean, because those have pretty good visa-free travel. You still need a visa to go to the US, for example, but if you just want to start going to Europe, that'll work. And I think that for most people, that's probably the best advice. You want to have as many visa-free travel options as possible, because who knows what could happen to your current passport. We had a pandemic not so long ago, and a lot of Western passports weren't so valuable anymore. Some of these Caribbean passports actually had more punch than, let's say, a US passport for some time being, because they have very small populations. They have very small caseloads. Therefore, they were allowed into more countries, for example. And yet, visa-free travel isn't the only reason. You know, if you have a great passport, what I would call a Tier A passport, US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, UK, Spain, what have you, we don't want to be arrogant about that, in the sense where we pass up a good opportunity to diversify and to prepare for any kind of, madness that could happen next by insisting we have the absolute best, visa-free travel. We want a passport that lets us go to the places that we want to go. We want to be able to add residence permits to our passport. So let's say I'm American and I'm St. Lucian, and I've been that, and I want to get a residence permit to go and live in Dubai. I may want to get my UAE residence permit under my St. Lucian passport, because it's potentially easier to get those documents, easier to get clearance, easier to do other stuff. But here's some of the questions that you want to ask yourself before you get citizenship by investment, or CBI. How much do I have, and how much do I need to invest? Again, my perspective in the Caribbean countries is less and more. Pay the donation, be done with it, wave your money goodbye. Don't sit around trying to collect six-figure sum in 5 years or 7 years, because who knows? Some of these developments don't get built. Some of the projects, literally one or a couple of them have turned out to just be utter frauds. Maybe in some of them the investment just goes down. Maybe in some of them the government decides to change the terms of who you can sell it to, or what you can sell it for, what the value of that property is. Just, for me, a certain certainty is a good idea. So you're looking at $100,000 minimum to start, and then on top of that, you're going to have fees. They're going to be higher in the Caribbean than, let's say, in Turkey. And they're going to be the highest in Malta, because you have to hire more expensive professionals to do the job. There's more things that need to be done. Malta has extreme levels, 4 layers of due diligence. The Caribbean does due diligence probably more than Turkey and Vanuatu does. So how much do I need to invest? Am I going to get that investment back? And then I want to understand the fees as well. One thing we do at Nomad Capitalist is we have one fee. This is what I always wanted as a consumer, and I found it so hard to get. What is my total out-of-pocket cost? We give you that quote. It's going to sound higher than a lot of other firms who are going to nickel and dime you after you sign up, to where, quite frankly, we're relatively competitive. We're probably a little bit more expensive, but we also do more of the work. A lot of people just say, go over there and fill out those forms. We actually handle more of the stuff for you. But how much do I want to invest? Is it going to be refundable? What's my opportunity cost? To be another good question. During the crypto boom, we had a lot of folks who had cryptocurrency. And so, hey, Turkey's citizenship used to be $250,000 in property. They said, hey, one day I want to buy some other properties. Okay, do Turkey. But then we ran the numbers. For them to sell that much of their crypto that they thought was going to, double or triple or 10x or whatever, they were actually better off just, paying the $100,000 that was gone forever, rather than investing $250,000 because of the opportunity cost. Meanwhile, someone who just had, endless money in the bank and they weren't doing anything with it, it's like, okay, go and do this $500,000 bond option over here in the Caribbean, because, you get the money back in a couple of years. What's the difference? You're not making an interest now anyway. So ask how much you need to invest, understand the fees, which is pretty opaque with most folks, and understand what the opportunity cost is that, okay? You want to understand what type of investment you're getting into. As with anything else, my advice, I watch a lot of Warren Buffett, invest in stuff that you know. Are you an expert in St. Kitts real estate? Now, if you just want to buy a property for lifestyle reasons, that's fine. But I think too many people try and conflate, I'm going to make a great investment and I'm going to live there. It's kind of hard to do that. Like, I'm going to Airbnb and live there sometimes and invest it and sell it later. It's like the St. Kitts and Nevis real estate market isn't really that liquid compared to where you're from. And again, it's in part dictated by citizenship by investment, which who knows what can happen to that in the future. Some of these programs go away. I wouldn't peg St. Kitts as the first program to go away, but who knows? What's going to be the market to buy your property at some point? So what kind of investment is it? Again, There's something to be said for just paying money as an insurance policy, as a single premium insurance policy. Here's a donation. I've got a passport. I can renew it every 5 or 10 years for life. I'm going to get one for everyone in my family, and we can travel no matter what happens. We've got a place to go no matter what happens. But what kind of investment am I making? And when you're thinking, what kind of investment am I making, you want to understand who stands to benefit from what. And so we've gotten a lot of offers over the years. When Cyprus had a program, that was an EU country. It was 2 million euros in real estate, plus you had to buy an extra house. And so we had people, the highest commission we got offered was 22%. And I remember we had the last client who was interested in Cyprus before the program got shut down in 2020, and I was trying to talk him out of it. I think eventually he had us do a bunch of stuff. And he said, I didn't have the heart to tell you I wanted to do Cyprus. I don't really care if I lose them. I just wanted to do it for fun. So he hired us to execute a bunch of the work, and he went and hired someone else for Cyprus. And I said, your property's probably not worth what you paid for it, because these people are engaging in 22% commissions. I'm sure there's stuff like that in Turkey. We haven't been offered that much in Turkey, but we don't do that at Nomad Capitalist. You pay us a fee, and you get unbiased advice. And, if Turkey's the best option, we're going to tell you not to do the one you're thinking. And we're going to help you find a property that has a reasonable commission. The guy's making 1%, for example. And, we don't run a business that's based on commission. So if you want all the options on the table, not only citizenship by investment, but by descent, by naturalization, by other ways, we can help you review all your options. And when it comes time to make an investment, if there is one, we're not investment advisors, but we at least can steer you away from deals where you're going to pay 22% too much. And by the way, I've seen people, have to sell properties they paid $1 million for like $300,000, because some of these developers you buy from with these real estate deals, they take you to the cleaners. I mean, there's a lot of juice in there. And so if you want to learn how we can help you choose the best citizenship, again, it's not just citizenship by investment. Go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply and learn what we can do. Now, the next question you want to ask yourself is, how long does it take to get the citizenship? Now, part of that's going to be dictated by how long it takes you to fill out the forms. Again, our approach of helping you and being more hands-on and having some systems and processes that move things along faster than, like, let's say, the lawyer in the Caribbean, means you get there faster. We saw, for some people, a 9 to 12 month delta of our approach versus kind of them doing it on their own. And again, there's maybe an opportunity cost there. If you're planning on doing something with that, with that passport, as soon as you get it, there may be a cost there to you by waiting that extra time. But how long does it take you? A lot of these countries takes 3 to 4 months to be approved. In Turkey, there's a residence component first. In Malta, there's a residence component first. And so if you're looking for the fastest one, it differs. It changes. Certain programs get a rush. Like let's say during the Russia-Ukraine war, one program at one point reopened to Russians. And so they got a whole rush. And then they got behind it a little slower. What was interesting is during the pandemic, they actually sped up the process. Unlike the legacy brand countries that were having a problem issuing passports to their own natural born citizens, the Caribbean kind of took the process online, so it made it faster. But you're looking at probably 6 months. So, and that, that means that you're on the ball on a few things too. But that's a nice number for the non-Malta options. But how long does it take? Nobody's getting citizenship in a week. We actually, we're not allowed to talk about it, but there was one situation where we had a real record in terms of speed with one of the programs. Next question is, where can I go with this passport? Again, let's not overrate this to where you can go to 152 countries. I can go to 153 countries visa-free. Who cares, right? I mean, some of these countries, even in countries that don't have citizenship by investment, go around negotiating deals with countries you'd never even heard of just to prop up their numbers count in some of the indexes. Like we have the Nomad Passport Index. It tracks what's the best passports. One of the factors is travel, all right? And the UAE ranks number 1 in part because they can go to more African countries than pretty much anybody else. If you don't want to go to African countries, that doesn't really matter. Again, most of these are not going to get you into the U.S. Now, if you're already American or Canadian or British or whatever, then who cares? You go as that, as long as you have that passport. But where can you go with that passport? Are there new countries you can go? Grenada, for example, has access to Russia and China. Probably not 2 places on the top of many people's lists right now, but they can go there, right? If you are an Eastern Caribbean citizen, you have access to move freely between 6 different countries. So if you're a Canadian, for example, right now you can live in 1 country. If you were to get St. Lucian citizenship, now you have 7 countries, 1 plus 6. So where can I go? Not just where can I visit, but where can I live if something crazy happens in the world adding more countries. Malta, you've got all of Europe. And again, they don't like to be called citizenship by investment, and I wouldn't call it because it's not quite as streamlined. But that's an option you can invest in. Where can I live with it? Again, if you're a European Union member country citizen, you can live anywhere in the European Union. Eastern Caribbean, you can live in Eastern Caribbean. If you're Turkish, you can live in Turkish. I guess you can live in Northern Cyprus as well. I think you can do that as well. Where can I live? That's important, right? It's not just about travel. It's about what if something happened. And by the way, what happens if you do live there? St. Kitts and Nevis, tax-free, right? The most flexible tax-free country out of all of these. Now, that doesn't mean anything if you don't live there. One question to ask is, what are the tax consequences? In really any of these countries, if you don't live there, it's none. But St. Kitts and Nevis, and also Vanuatu, we don't recommend that one as much. Just tax-free countries. Go and run your business. I would never set up the business in that country in many cases, but I would, run my business, incorporate it somewhere else in that country, and does not add any additional tax liability if you live there. Being a citizen allows you to live there. You don't need to get a residence permit. You don't need to ask permission. You're not a tourist. You are a citizen. And so that gives you an option of a place that you can go. Not a bad thing to have for the rest of your life. Heck, Saudi Arabia, they're tax-free. They sell permanent residence for life for $213,000. You're not a citizen. There's no passport to travel on. And so, for half that price, you can get citizenship, and you can live in a country for your entire life. What risks are imposed? What new risks are imposed is a question to ask. Vanuatu, if I were going to some, Swiss bank that said, tell us all your passports, I might be a little worried being from Vanuatu. Obviously there are, passports. I mean, Russian citizenship right now is rather toxic. You'll have a hard time doing a lot of things in the West. They don't have a citizenship by investment program. They have a golden visa. But what are the risks? Generally these countries are not looking to tax you unless you live there, unless they have a tax. They don't have a lot of, desire to chase people around the world. So I don't see as many risks. Now, if you lie on the application, they can, revoke your citizenship. So you obviously want to be honest, but you want to understand the new risks. So that's something that we can discuss, with people who work with us on a one-on-one basis, understanding the pros and cons of each. And then the last one is, how safe am I going to be? Is it a safe country to live in? St. Kitts had a couple bad years in terms of safety a while back. Their data is not really that up to date. I know people who live there. They find it to be quite safe. Turkey's actually, in that region, one of the safer countries. If you haven't been to Istanbul, it's actually a place that I think probably doesn't get enough credit. It's not a place I would live, but it's a place if I had to live there, I could. Not tax-friendly, but I could. And so, how safe are you going to be? A lot of people are never going to go to their citizenship by investment country. And so you're going to be as safe as wherever it is you go. But I think that, for many people, the citizenship that you get through CBI is kind of a foundational piece where then again, you stack residence permits on top of it. You stack bank accounts on top of it. There's going to be some banks that don't want people from certain CBI countries. And so if you have another passport, fine. I increasingly think if this is your first, second passport, that's fine. Long term, I would want to have, if I'm getting rid of my current citizenship, I'd want to have CBI plus something else. There are some issues. Some people are like, we know you bought that. You may not want to have that as your only passport. But if you're keeping your current passport and adding that on, it's just a foundational piece to give you just another Lego to build more things on top of. Could be banking, could be living, could be tax savings, could be freedom of movement, could be any number of things. So those are the questions that I would ask. Now, obviously, if you work with Nomad Capitalist, we may ask you 250 different questions to figure out which passports are best for you, which programs are the most interesting. There's no one size fits all. And for a lot of folks in the West, you may already be entitled to some passport through your ancestry that costs less. You may want to move somewhere. I mean, there's just so many questions to ask to figure out the best passport for you. But if you want this foundational piece to build on, to where you have options, that no matter what happens, you have that other country, your eggs are not all in one basket, you have options, then citizenship by investment is streamlined, it's clear, you make an investment or you make a donation and you get the passport in a matter of months. That's what it offers you.